Hello, and welcome to this session of Awepta's digital learning series titled Google Classroom as Your Digital Learning Space. My name is Joe Cisco, and I'd like to spend some time with you today learning about some of the ways that Google Classroom and G Suite can support the learning of your students and you on your journey towards developing a virtual learning environment. We will explore some of the ways that you see on this slide here, and please know right ahead of time that any of the links and files and resources you see in today's presentation will be shared with you at the end. Finally, just before we begin, please know that Google Classroom is still trending on Twitter as of the date of this presentation, so you are not alone in your journey with educators around the world. In a previous session, we spent some time learning about some of the skills you need inside of Google Classroom. Let's take a moment and visit those right now. So this file here is a self-assessment opportunity for you as an educator to say, where am I in my journey towards learning about Google Classroom? You probably have a general understanding of the four main tabs in Google Classroom if you're using it. Maybe you've used all of the tabs except grades, and hopefully we'll dig a little bit deeper into each of these today in today's session. In the People tab, as it is aptly named, this is where you add your students with either a code or inviting students individually. I may also add that inside of the People tab, you can add a co-teacher, which gives that co-teacher the same permissions you have in terms of posting assignments, grading assignments, etc., except they do not have the ability to delete the class. In the Stream, which a lot of you are probably your first point of contact with students, you're able to post a simple message using some of the tools, and this is where the power of Google Classroom sort of comes out. You're allowed to post very easily the items as you see here, something from your Google Drive, a link, a file, or a video from YouTube. You can probably schedule a post and save a draft. And then one of the nice places where we start to have some discussion about you as the teacher sort of being the moderator or being the controller of that environment, the gatekeeper, I suppose. This is where you have some choices. And it's all about those choices that we'll talk about today. In the classwork tab, where most of the action is sort of happening, is where you as the educator have the ability to add a topic to the classwork session. You can add materials such as PDFs and Word documents. I would say non-G Suite files, but you can certainly add material there from G Suite as well. And you've probably figured out that you're able to drag and drop to organize the classwork area, which is a great feature. And the last two parts of this benchmark document here I'd like to address clearly, and we'll spend a lot of time doing this today. This one here is a very important piece that when you're assigning or creating material, you have an important choice to make, and you can see the choices there, and we will dig deeply into that today. And finally, if you've used Google Classroom, you may or may not have tried to distribute a Google form to your students, and you may have experienced an issue, and we will hopefully provide a solution for that today. So to frame today's session, I would like to take a moment and discuss this quote from Casey Bell, one of the educators that's quite visible on Twitter. I love the title of this graphic when she says "rethink assignments." I'm going to read through it quickly with you so we can have an understanding of what she's talking about here. If it's an assignment that can be easily duplicated, we need to consider more original product types, incorporate choice of topic and or tool, and require reflection where students explain their ideas and reflect on learning. There's quite a bit of information in that quote, but the title itself, like I said, Rethink Assignments, is very, very applicable to what's going on in today's classrooms, especially our virtual classrooms. Another way to sort of summarize what Casey is trying to say there is from a document I will share with you. There's a nice link here um, to this resource from Teach, Learn, Innovate, and the title of it is Google Classroom More Than Just a Worksheet Machine. Again, I will share this document with you. It's really, really well done. What I did notice actually is just the way they shared this. It's a Google document, but they use the preview button. So you'll notice that it opens up in full screen and you have access to all of these links. Wonderful, wonderful document here that has a whole bunch of resources. I would invite you to take a look at these when we leave. One thing you may or may not have heard of is something called De Bono's Thinking Hats, and it is very inspirational when you read through how they've implemented that one. So moving back here, a reminder from a previous session, what Google Classroom does, it helps you as an educator create, assign, and get student work back paperlessly, which is obviously great for the environment, but it also allows you to provide feedback and communicate with students in real time. Um, Very, very powerful tool. I will also add here, as we said previously, Google Classroom does work best when other tools in G Suite are incorporated. So docs, slides, sheets, drawings, and forms. One disclaimer, and this can certainly be a conversation for another day, you may or may not be using some of these wonderful tools that are on the screen right now. I am not going to take a lot of time to delve into any of these deeply. I will remind you that most of the time when you're using these types of tools, it's just a simple link out to the actual activity that you created in using one of these tools. But in terms of integration, these tools aren't technically integrated into Google Classroom. They're just sort of accessible through a link. One document I would like to speak to pretty clearly today during this presentation is a document from a person named Catlin Tucker. I've seen Catlin present, and she's wonderful. She spends a lot of time speaking about this particular document, actually, and the title of it is a traditional teacher-led approach. And she tries to encourage teachers to reconsider this approach and have more student-centered both learning and assessment. So to walk you through this document, generally what's happening in our classrooms is either it's face-to-face or virtual. The teacher assigns some work. Example, they ask the students to write a paragraph. Um, the teacher collects that stack of work, and then they spend hours grading that work. And right now in our virtual world, what's happening with a lot of teachers, they're experiencing a lot of issues right now because not only are students not maybe completing or handing in that work, but they're getting a lot of assignments late. I know as an educator, I find it very difficult to mark backwards when you're marking stuff that is received maybe a month later, or even a couple of weeks later. You're sort of not in that mode. It's difficult to go back and remark that. Number four really speaks to sort of where we are as teachers and what we would like to see from our students, but sometimes we're not getting. So the teacher passes back the work. The students look at the grade and then they often toss it in the garbage. Part of the reason for that Catlin would have us believe, and I would certainly agree with, is that the reason they're not looking it back is quite often that assessment, that evaluation, that feedback piece is given back to the student at the end of the assignment. And that really is almost like the end game. We'll talk about when that feedback can be given in a more timely fashion and maybe inspire the student to actually take that feedback and modify or change their work. So in terms of today's agenda, I'll finish up some intro stuff here. I'm going to spend some time talking about how Google Classroom and G Suite can make your life easier. A big piece we'll talk about today is learning needs in the classroom, and I think you all know what your learning needs are, but we'll talk about specific learning needs that I'd like to focus on and how Google Classroom can support those learning needs. And then finally, I will speak about how we can talk about some sharing and then support moving forward. So one piece I'd like to speak to quickly is the classwork tab again, because it's such an important piece inside Google Classroom. If you've created anything inside of the classwork, you're very familiar with this menu. I won't read through them with you, but each of the choices has its own unique application inside of Google Classroom. Probably right now you're using the assignment choice. You may or may not have given a quiz assignment, and often you're posting some material. And then that topic thing at the bottom. Please don't feel the need if you're new to Google Classroom to do all of these at once. It's certainly a journey, and take your time doing that. One of the choices you will be confronted with, and this is a very important choice, when you create an assignment or a task for students, you have a choice of students can view the file, students can edit the file, and you can make a copy for each student. Again, I will go into this deeply today. Um, all of the choices are explained pretty nicely here with some examples. And I have a wonderful image that I just found recently on the internet that I will share with you, which also links out to a great outline of what each of these choices mean, with some great sort of applications of when you can use each of them. So that's really, really well done, actually. A quick word about Google Forms. Um, if you're if you have some facility inside of G Suite, you're probably very familiar with docs, sheets, slides, and drawings. That is where you make that choice of possibly giving the choice or possibly giving the student access to each of those things. Again, this is totally up to you, but that choice is available for those types of documents. On the other hand, a Google form, it really doesn't make any sense to say I want to give the students a copy of each of that Google form, or I would like the students to edit the Google form. Most likely when you're giving a Google form, you simply want the student to complete the form. You want them, it's almost like a survey. As you probably are aware, you can give a Google form as a quiz and it can mark itself, which we will take a look at today. So for today's session, I've built a website that I would like to walk you through that speaks specifically to the learning needs that we can meet as teachers inside of our Google Classroom. So as you can see, I've stated the purpose of this website. The purpose of the site is to provide an overview of how educators may use Google Classroom to meet important learning needs in today's virtual classrooms. So yes, it is geared a lot towards virtual stuff, but certainly there's a lot of application to face-to-face. So I'm going to speak quickly about each of these learning needs, and then we'll delve into a few of them quickly. Please know that you have access to this website, and there's lots and lots of material here. I certainly can't spend time walking you through every piece of this, but I will highlight some of the features that I think will inspire you to come back. So number one, I'm going to speak quickly about rich interactive learning opportunities. So I include the word interactive, not to say that because it's interactive, it's therefore rich, but at the same time, if it's interactive, it probably is engaging the student in the learning. And often if we can engage that student and get them thinking about the learning, it will probably be a rich learning activity. Excuse me, one of the learning needs you may also have is you want to provide collaborative learning spaces for your students. So you want places where students can work together maybe as a whole class, sometimes just in partners or as a group, and even something where you can collaborate with students on. Building student portfolios is something you may or may want to achieve as a teacher, and we'll speak about that. And there's certainly some great links to that in the website. A couple other learning needs that I'd like to address. One that's very big, again, back to that whole piece by Catlin Tucker, inspiring student-driven learning and assessment. So you as a teacher, you're doing a lot of the work, you're doing a lot of the teacher-led instruction and assessment. Maybe we can rethink that and inspire some student learning and assessment. Promoting well-being is always front and center right now with the crisis we're in. There's a lot of different things happening, and we need to address both the well-being of the educator and the student. Student demonstration of learning with all of the great tools out there. One of the things you as an educator probably want is to give those students that choice to demonstrate their learning in the different ways that they are probably pretty good at, but at least invite them to do that in different ways. Excuse me. And lastly, I'm going to ask you to maybe reconsider some of the ways you give feedback, and we'll take some time and look at that today. So the way the website is structured is pretty nice. You'll notice that each of these are active links, and you can jump down to the section you want to look at. I'm going to take a quick look at rich interactive learning opportunities. So before I do that, I want to talk to you about the way this is structured, just so you have an awareness of what you're looking at here. So in a section, for instance, as rich interactive learning opportunities, I've created some subtopics. So in this one, I have graphic organizers, I have interactive learning, magnetic poetry, and I have some extras down here. Within each of those subcategories, I suppose, I've dug a little bit deeper and I'm going to speak about some tools and strategies, how you implement that in Google Classroom, and then some of the evidence of success. I'm really, really pleased with the evidence of success because I think it's important with you as a teacher to have those lofty goals and those high aspirations. It's things like this. So if I'm having students think critically, then I'm probably in a pretty good place. If I'm having students that are incorporating multimedia into their thinking, video, images, audio, and so on, they're making connections not just always in a text-based format, but things that will inspire them and engage them in their learning. So just to pop down a little bit, some of the evidence of success that you may want to be achieving are students are interacting and they're creating unique products. So again, I'm very happy with the evidence of success in the sense that You as a teacher, if you're meeting those needs, then you're probably in a pretty good place in your classroom. So very quickly, let me investigate one or two of these, which I think will inspire you to maybe take another closer look at this website and think about how this is implemented in Google Classrooms. Google Classroom, sorry. So let me pop out to something here called Inventions. This was created in Google Slides. Um, and this is a document where you can see there's some instructions on the right. There are 10 images at the right. Each of these are inventions that were important to our world. Please rank them by order of importance by dragging them onto the list. So you as an educator have created this document and you would like your students to be able to sort them in a way that makes sense to them. So looking on the right, if I'm a student, I probably think the internet's really, really important. I might put that as number one. I don't think the light bulb is really that important. They probably come very used to it. I don't think the nail's very important if I'm a student. They probably don't know what a printing press is. They probably think, oh, wow, an airplane's really important. And they think the telephone might be in the middle. So again, you can see the process that it would be very good critical thinking for a student to analyze and think about, maybe do some research about what these things are and sort them in a way that makes sense to them. So the big idea is you as an educator would want the students to have the ability to work on their own version of this. So in Google Classroom, what you would do is you would just pop out to you would in your Google Classroom take a moment and assign that to students in a way that they're going to have access to do that with a copy of their own thing. So in Google Classroom, you would create an assignment and you might call it inventions. And I'll skip the instructions, but you're probably aware that you can give them. You would add that file from your Google Drive. So you would go Google Drive. The recent file I worked on was that one. So I'm going to add that to the Google Drive or that to the assignment. And you'll notice when that happens, when you're giving an assignment and you've added something from your drive, you have the opportunity to say, to make this choice. I want to give a copy for each student. So when I say make a copy for each student in that class is going to get their own copy. So I could do things in the right where I assign some points. I can choose which students I want to hand it into. Again, great for differentiated instruction, but at this moment we'll just focus on the task at hand here. I can set a due date. I can add a topic. I can even add a rubric, which again is a conversation for another day. So when I press assign, each student in that classroom would get their own version of that assignment and they'd be able to work on it and manipulate it themselves and then turn it in. Wonderful. So again, I can show you a whole bunch of these. I'm not going to show you all of them. I do want to pop out and maybe inspire you with a third-party tool, which I think is amazing. This is under one of the extras. If you've never heard of H5P, you may want to take a moment and investigate some of these. A couple of examples. Um, I'm a science teacher, so I actually really like this one. Um, the instruction is drag to arrange the images in the correct sequence. Now, again, this whole focus is about Google Classroom. So one thing you'll notice is when the students click on the link, they're brought to full screen, which is brilliant. Um, and all they do is they interact with this. So student says, I think interphase might be first. Um, I think this might be happening second. I think this anaphase might be happening third, and so on. And then the final piece would be of two separate cells. So if I show my solution, oh, sorry, I should retry this. Let me try this one more time, sorry. Um, I'm just going to give it a shot here and see what happens. Let's just say these are right. And I'm going to check this and say, oh, I made a mistake. I would probably have to resume, and I would switch these two and show the solution, and I'm good to go. So again, the idea is if you're using H5P, to implement that in Google Classroom, all you're really doing is you're including that as a link in a post. So whether you put that post in the classwork area, whether you put that in the stream, you can shoot these students out to any activities that you might have created in H5P. Again, hopefully you're inspired and maybe take a look at that. And there's a lot of tools you can use there. So providing collaborative learning spaces, I think, is an awesome tool here. So very quickly, one thing you may want to do is have your students create a class glossary or an FAQ section. So my thinking is this. Often in any course, whether it be a primary course or something as high level as a grade 12 biology course, you're probably dealing with lots of terms and definitions. So you as the teacher often are the person who's creating that resource where you're building terms and definitions with students, you're shooting those out to students, and you may have it as an assessment opportunity, I'm not sure, but wouldn't it be great if the students could be building that or co-creating that throughout the year? So what you might do here is you might consider creating a document where all the students can work on. So what you do here is here's the instructions. Class glossary, be sure to add your name to any of your contributions. A couple of examples here. Um, this is something on mitosis where a student is added. The name's not added, but it's added April 20th. So a person adds something about meiosis. One piece I like here is this person named Sharon added this on May 10th. And then someone peer edited it. A person named Diana added a video. So again, the brilliant piece here is that this is a collaborative document that any students in the class can actually add to. And you as a teacher have this as a wonderful assessment opportunity, but the students really will have that opportunity to see themselves. And again, if I can only imagine how great it is when a student sees themselves in the learning or the instruction in a classroom, the likelihood of them returning to the classroom is very large. So how you implement that in Google Classroom is to simply create a piece of material or assignment, and then add that collaborative link or presentation to the piece there. So inside of Google Classroom, you may do something like this. If we create this as an assignment, I could call this glossary. And again, I could add some instructions. I could say add. I'm going to add this from my Google Drive. There's the document right there. And what you would want to do here is you would want to choose the choice that the students can edit the file. Again, it may be very scary. You're probably wondering which students can edit the file. All students can edit the file. So when I choose this, I am now posting a document that every student in my class can go edit, which again may be very scary, but might be an awesome opportunity to invite your students to be part of the learning in that classroom. I won't assign it, but I think you get the idea. So another nice partner and group problem solving strategy might be this one. I really like this one. I want to show this one. In, this was created in Google Drawings. So the idea is this, in this workspace, you present a problem. Here's the problem you present. The instructions are please solve the problem on the board, record your thinking in the space below, and use different colors text to identify yourself. So let me show you, let me tell you about how this evolved, this actual problem. Um, I had a grade 3 teacher I was working with, and the teacher was experiencing an issue where they had a class set of Chromebooks. Every student had their own Chromebook, and often she had students working in partners, but they were working right next to each other, and there was a lot of class noise. So what the teacher did was she said, what if I separate you in the classroom? So I'm going to have one student sit in one corner, one student sit in the other corner, and she strategically separated all the partners so they were not sitting together and didn't have the ability to talk. But they did have the ability to communicate in a Google drawing here. So the students, as you can see, partner 1 wrote something, partner 2 wrote something, partner 3 wrote something, and so on. And you as the teacher can see this banter back and forth, and you can see which student did which work. They have to articulate their thinking carefully. What a brilliant way to have that thinking recorded and to find an opportunity to actually see them and to see their thinking in a visible way. Again, to assign that inside of Google Classroom, you would I'll go back. To assign that in Google Classroom, you would create your particular assignment, and then you would add that collaborative link, and you could do that for selected students as you've seen in the past. There are several other places I would like to visit with you. I do want to spend one thing about considering feedback when you're done here. I think this is another tool you may want to consider. And then again, hopefully this is an invitation to you to come back and visit this website and visit all the resources, and please contact me afterwards if you have any questions. So one of the things I'd like to share with you is this document that I created when I was teaching OECTA AQ courses. So I'm going to walk you through it and tell you what it is. When I was teaching the courses, I found that there was a lot of discussions in the courses. And what happened was me as the educator, or me as the instructor in the course, I had to assess those discussions. And what I found myself doing was I found myself having the need to sort of reply to almost all of the posts and all of the responses. And I found that it was very ineffective in the sense that I wasn't really reaching all the students. And quite often I was giving feedback to people, but it was very individualized feedback. But I thought, man, I need to find a way to get that out to the classroom. So what I did was I created what I call the class feedback piece. So there was a discussion topic. I would let you through, read through it at your leisure if you'd like. Essentially, what the participants had to do was just sort of comment on the privacy and safety concerns in in the online world. So what I did very simply was is I sort of curated all of the comments and responses into one place where the class could now view this. So I went through general comments. So some of the general comments I discussed were things that resonated with me or were very, very highlighted in the in all of the discussion forums. So um, one of the participants said something like this. Here's another couple of comments from people and then more comments, and we went back. And then I said, okay, what are some teacher strategies that people might have shared? So included in this section are strategies suggested by the participants that teachers may use to address these issues. So again, a lot of participation from the students, and I thought these comments were something that needed to be shared with the whole group. If you're familiar, quite often the way things happen in classes, there's pockets of learning, but that pockets of learning often are not shared with the entire class. So I thought this was a great way of sharing this with everybody. So I think you get the idea of what this is. Um, a couple of comments of about the positives that came out of this, unintended consequences. So what happened was is I got a lot of feedback from people saying to me, "Can you include me in the next summary?" So I was doing these summaries, and the participant, if their names or their resources weren't included, they would be requesting me, "Can you make sure you include me in the next summary?" And then what that did was too is if they wanted to be included, think about it, they're doing better work. So think of your students. If you're creating a class summary of an assignment, they're going to up their game and make sure their work, if it is going to be included, is going to be solid and certainly deserving of being inside that summary. One of the greatest things that happened in one of my courses was I had students approaching me saying, "Can I do the summary next time?" So think of that as an educator. If you're getting students asking you if they can do work, that is your dream as a teacher. So absolutely. And if you're wondering how this is made, where we pop back and forth, this is very easily made. That's part of the resources that I'll share with you at the end. So to wrap up today's presentation, to give you some final thoughts, with respect to social emotional learning during the COVID-19 crisis, I've included a link to a wonderful article here. It's a pretty short read, but it's very timely in this time that we're currently in. And then finally, I'd like to share a video with you. Um, the York Catholic District School Board created this amazing video with a song from the Beatles about "Here Comes the Sun." Uh, make it the next thing you watch, or make it the next thing you share in your Google Classroom with your students. It's very uplifting and it's very timely. And then finally, if you've made it to this point in the presentation, thank you and thank you for participating. If you visit that bit.ly right there, any of the resources or links that you would like to have access to are all there. But again, please see this as an invitation to contact me, and maybe we can create a professional learning network moving forward. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.